The ear is one of those organs you never really think about. You don't pay attention to it until something stops working, until silence suddenly feels suspiciously loud, until the sounds of the world no longer come together the way they used to. It's an organ that works for you nonstop, even when you're asleep, even when you're resting, even when you're trying to escape noise. Hearing is always on duty, like a guard that never closes its eyes. And that's exactly why it's easy to forget how fragile this system really is. How much it depends on delicate structures you can't see, can't feel, can't consciously control. The ear doesn't hurt, doesn't warn you, doesn't shout for attention. It won't tell you something is wrong. Changes in hearing always begin quietly, sometimes literally. At first, something sounds a bit distant. Then you're not sure whether someone actually said something or if you only imagined it. And sometimes you simply notice that you're asking people to repeat themselves, even though you used to hear everything effortlessly. The ear is one of the most extraordinary biological mechanisms we have, not just because it lets us hear. Its true uniqueness lies in how it works, quietly, continuously, without any maintenance breaks, without an offline mode. Most people don't realize that hearing is the most alert and most active human sense. And that's not a metaphor. It's a biological fact. Hearing is one of the first senses to start working, long before a person is even born. The eye needs light, taste needs food, touch requires contact with the world. But hearing wakes up in the dark, around the 20th week of fetal development. The inner ear is already formed enough for the fetus to start receiving sounds. The rhythm of the mother's heartbeat, the gurgling of her intestines, her voice conducted through tissue and bone. These aren't words. They're more like distant music, blurred, soft, but rhythmic. And this experience shapes the brain even before birth. When a baby enters the world, the ear itself is physically almost ready. What's fascinating is that the structures of the inner ear barely grow at all after birth. They're nearly the size they'll be in adulthood. And yet, an infant's hearing works completely differently from an adult's. Here's where the biggest myth begins, one that many people repeat. Little kids have weaker hearing. That's not true. Their hearing is different. In a way, it's even more sensitive, but not yet organized. In a newborn, the temporal bone that houses the inner ear is soft and flexible, which makes sound conduction more chaotic. The membranes and fluids react to vibrations, but the brain doesn't know how to interpret them yet. This is what often confuses adults. If a baby doesn't react to a sound, it doesn't necessarily mean the baby didn't hear it. The baby did hear it, sometimes too intensely. But the brain hasn't learned to recognize that signal as important. It's like being handed a book in a foreign language. You can see the letters, but you don't understand them. Over time, the brain begins to organize sounds. Very young children have an amazing ability to distinguish frequencies, an ability adults lose forever. They can detect subtle differences in sound with a precision similar to musicians with perfect pitch. That's why they learn language so quickly. They don't just hear sounds, they hear micro details, nuances adults can no longer perceive. For example, a baby in Japan can distinguish L from R just as well as a baby in the United States. Only around 10 months of age does the brain begin specializing in the sounds of the native language and filtering out those it doesn't need. This leads to something else. A child's brain is far more sensitive to noise than an adult's, not because the ear is more delicate, but because its filtering system is still under construction. An adult brain can automatically ignore background noise. A child's brain processes everything at once. That's why babies cry at vacuum cleaners or loud conversations. That's not weak hearing, that's unfiltered hearing. At the same time, there's a phenomenon that confuses many people. Young children sometimes seem less responsive to certain sounds, especially quieter or less distinct ones. Why? because their brain is still learning what matters. A child may completely ignore a sound that would be obvious to an adult, simply because their attention system is wired differently. That's not a hearing problem. It's a developmental phase. One of the most fascinating facts is this: children have a higher upper limit of audible frequencies than adults. That's why teenagers can hear certain high-pitched tones that adults can't. It's not magic, it's just that the highest frequencies are the first to disappear with age, and children still have the full range. The development of hearing takes much longer than most people think. While the ear itself is nearly complete at birth, the brain can take more than a decade to fully mature in the areas responsible for complex auditory processing. Understanding speech in noise, separating voices, picking up on intonation, music perception, rhythm analysis, all of this develops slowly. That's why kids sometimes don't hear that someone spoke to them, even though they physically heard the sound. Their brain is still building the networks that interpret what they hear. The beautiful thing is that a child's hearing isn't weak, it's new. Like a freshly calibrated microphone that doesn't yet know what is signal and what is noise. It's more vulnerable to overstimulation, but also more flexible, more absorbent, more ready to adapt. That's why kids pick up languages so easily. Their hearing is a machine designed to decode the world. Not everyone hears the same way, even if they technically have normal hearing. Differences in how people receive and interpret sounds begin in their genes. Each of us inherits a set of traits that influence how the ear functions. The density of the temporal bone, the shape of the ear canal, the number of hair cells in the cochlea, the amount of auditory nerve fibers. Some genetic variants allow a person to hear higher frequencies, distinguish consonants more accurately, or locate sounds faster. Others may make hearing more sensitive to noise or more prone to wear over time. But genes are only the beginning. The second factor is environment and sound exposure. Someone who grew up in a loud city, surrounded by constant noise, horns, buses, alarms, will have more wear in the high frequencies than someone raised in a quiet rural area. On the other hand, children raised in homes filled with music, conversation, or language learning may develop greater sensitivity to sound details, better pitch perception, and stronger auditory memory. Hearing is largely shaped by experience, even if genes set its initial range. The third factor is lifestyle and noise exposure in adulthood. People who regularly listen to headphones at high volume, work in industrial noise, or are exposed to explosions or gunshots, soldiers, hunters, lose hair cells in the cochlea more quickly. Meanwhile, those who avoid excessive noise and practice healthy hearing habits, taking breaks, giving their ears time to recover, maintaining good overall health, can preserve sound precision longer. This shows that while genetics provides the initial blueprint, environment can significantly modify the final outcome. The fourth and far less obvious factor is the brain's ability to process sound. Two people can have identical audiograms, identical hearing thresholds, yet be worlds apart in how well they understand speech in noise. From early childhood, the brain learns to filter background sounds, distinguish meaningful signals, and focus attention. A person whose auditory brain has been well trained will understand conversations in a cafe, on a busy street, or in a crowded kitchen far more easily than someone with the exact same physical capability of the ear. That's why children raised in homes filled with conversation and music later develop a perceptual advantage over peers who grew up in quieter, less sound-rich environments. The last factor, frequently ignored, is age and overall health. Hearing ages naturally, but the speed of this aging depends on things like blood circulation to the inner ear, metabolism, inflammation, diabetes, or high blood pressure. Even slight reductions in blood flow to the cochlea, mild chronic inflammation, or toxin exposure can make certain frequencies less clear. That's why someone who had perfect hearing when they were young may hear worse in midlife than another person who was genetically less advantaged but lived a healthier lifestyle. In the end, differences in hearing between people result from a complex interaction of genes, experience, environment, lifestyle, and brain function. Some individuals hear like precision detectors, catching the smallest rustle, the tiniest shift in tone, the faintest breath in the distance. Others need everything to be louder, clearer, and right in the center of focus to truly notice it. And this diversity shows that hearing isn't just an organ. It's a biological neurological system that develops and changes over a lifetime, responding both to what we inherited and to what we lived through. You're standing in the woods. The silence feels absolute, broken only by the soft crunch of leaves under your feet. You breathe slowly, trying to steady yourself, when suddenly, footsteps behind you, closer than before. Your heart speeds up. You turn your head, nothing, only wind teasing the branches. Then you hear it again, the same sound. Your brain shouts, "Someone is there!" And yet no one is walking. It isn't a hallucination. It's your brain. The same auditory system that helps you distinguish voices and understand speech in a noisy city switches into alarm mode. For thousands of years, its job was to detect danger before a predator could see you. A false alarm could save your life. Better to mistake a leaf for a predator than a predator for a leaf. Your brain predicts sounds before they even reach your ear. When you hear a distant rustle or crack, it automatically matches the noise to patterns it already knows. A step, a twig snapping, a body brushing against brush. If something resembles the rhythm of your phone notification or a doorbell, your brain fills in the rest, and suddenly you hear a ringtone even though nothing rang. Sounds in the forest work the same way. Your internal alarm system is alert, because nature once demanded early reactions. The cells in your ear send impulses, your brain interprets them, and you're handed a complete story. Someone is walking behind you, though in reality, it's only the wind. At home, the effect grows even more interesting. You're sitting quietly, your phone next to you. Suddenly, your ringtone. You grab the device, glance at the screen. Nothing. It's called phantom ringing. A brain that's learned to anticipate notifications overinterprets any similar sound pattern. Modern life has trained your survival system to respond to digital threats with the intensity once reserved for real predators. Fatigue, stress, nighttime, all of it amplifies the phenomenon. A brain in alert mode sharpens hearing beyond its usual tuning. Every rustle, crack, or whisper in the quiet becomes real, even if it isn't. And the most fascinating part, hearing something that isn't there doesn't mean weakness. It means your auditory system is alert, active, and built for survival. A brain designed to protect you from silent danger is simply doing its job. Even if the modern world has changed the meaning of danger, your thoughts feel scattered, lost in the noise of everything around you. And then suddenly, you hear your name. Did someone call you? You look around. No one is looking at you, no one is speaking. And yet your brain has done its work again. It isn't magic or coincidence. It's the master-level ability of your mind to select information. It's the cocktail party effect. In the middle of chaos, your brain can extract the one sound that matters most, the sound connected to you. Even if nobody said your name, your brain fills in the pattern, because that word is the most important signal in your auditory universe. The brain learns priorities across a lifetime. Throughout evolution, hearing your name, or the voice of someone close, meant danger or safety. Anna or Tom triggered an instant reaction, long before conscious thinking kicked in. Today, surrounded by endless sounds, the brain still follows this ancient rule. Your ears receive millions of sound waves, and the auditory cortex picks the ones marked as important. Your name sits at the very top of this list, so it appears in your consciousness even when it's only a whisper of wind, a passing echo, or a sound that merely resembles speech. This explains why sometimes you don't hear someone calling you for real. Your brain was busy prioritizing something else. The selection system works both ways. What matters gets through. Everything else is filtered out. That's why hearing your name in a crowd is proof that your hearing and brain operate in perfect synchrony, scanning the world for signals that have the greatest meaning to you. And the most fascinating part, it's not constant. Your brain can overinterpret a passing hum or rustle in such a way that your name pops into your awareness even when nobody spoke. It's a survival mechanism repurposed for modern life, one that once saved lives and now confuses us in a busy cafe. The ear never sleeps. There is no moment in a 24-hour cycle when it powers down or stops working. Even in deep sleep, when the entire body enters a state of regeneration and the brain slows its rhythms, the ear continues its work as a guardian. It is the first to detect danger, the first to tell the brain, "This is important. You should check this. This might be a threat." At night, when you feel like you hear nothing, your ear is actually running a microbiological selection process. Hundreds of thousands of impulses, vibrations, micro-movements, and acoustic waves reach your ears non-stop, but only a few pass into awareness. It's a filtering system, but more precisely a system of priorities. A loud noise like a train passing by or a plane overhead is often ignored during sleep because the brain classifies it as repetitive, neutral, predictable. A baby's cry, even a very soft one, breaks through instantly. Why? Because it's a biologically encoded priority signal, a natural alarm, one of the oldest survival connections between sound and action. To understand how extraordinary this system is, you have to look inside, into the mechanics so delicate that no technology created by humans can truly imitate it. The ear is divided into three major parts: the outer ear, middle ear, and inner ear. Each plays a different role, but they work together as a single unit. How? First, sound waves enter the ear canal, where they are transformed into mechanical vibrations by the eardrum, which acts like an ultra-sensitive microphone. These vibrations are then transmitted through the three smallest bones in the human body, the malleus, incus, and stapes. These tiny bones amplify the signal almost 20-fold, and only then does the real magic begin. Because inside the inner ear sits the cochlea, a structure no bigger than a pinky nail, yet unimaginably complex. Within it flows a delicate liquid, and on the basilar membrane stand rows of hair cells equipped with microscopic stereocilia. They are the reason you feel music, recognize a loved one's voice, and react to every sound in the world. Their task is singular: to transform fluid vibrations into electrical impulses the brain can understand. But here is the truth, stated plainly. These tiny hairs are so fragile that once damaged, they never regenerate. That's why you hear differently as you age. That's why after concerts you notice ringing. That's why your hearing will never return to the state you had as a child. And the most important part is this: the ear's work does not end in the cochlea. The real processing happens in the brain. And here we arrive at one of the greatest illusions in human biology. You do not hear with your ears, you hear with your brain. The ear gathers data. The brain decides what it means. When you sleep, the brain continues to hear, only shifting the rules of interpretation. Neutral sounds, the wind, distant traffic, an airplane overhead, are filtered out. They will not wake you because your brain classifies them as irrelevant. It's an evolutionary program written thousands of years ago. There was no reason to awaken for every noise. But a baby's cry, a change in an animal's roar, footsteps in the dark? That's different. Those patterns sound like danger, and that is why the ear, even in sleep, acts like a radar calibrated for survival. Even more extraordinary is that the ear continues to function when the brain is dulled by medication, alcohol, stress, or deep exhaustion. Its structures do not stop transmitting signals. They never rest. It is the only sensory organ whose activity never falls to zero at any stage of sleep. So when someone asks, "Why are my ears so sensitive?" the true answer is, because they were designed as your security system, and every security system must be active at all times. The ear is a mechanism that does not know rest. It works even when you are unaware of your own existence. And this is only the beginning of how astonishing the inside of your head truly is, every day, every night, without interruption. The ear ages faster than most organs because its structure and mode of operation combine extreme precision with extreme fragility. The very features that give us remarkable hearing also make the ear extraordinarily vulnerable. Hearing lost with age is not an accident. It is the biological consequence of how the ear was built, and that is where the entire drama lies. First, the ear is one of the most energy-hungry sensory organs. The cochlea, this microscopic spiral whose job is to translate vibrations into electrical signals, requires a constant, intense supply of oxygen and glucose. Hair cells consume enormous amounts of energy because their work is non-stop and extraordinarily precise. The problem is that the blood vessels feeding them are extremely thin. So thin that even minor drops in blood flow, tiny moments of hypoxia, or brief fluctuations in blood pressure can cause micro damage. In other organs, these episodes are compensated for. In the ear, they accumulate. The second problem is oxidative stress. This is a natural phenomenon. Mitochondria produce free radicals that damage cells. Cells with high energy demands produce more of them, and hair cells are among the highest in this category. Unfortunately, the ear has almost no capacity for regeneration. The liver can regrow. Skin can rebuild. Even nerves can partly repair themselves. But the hair cells, the essential receptors of sound, once lost, are gone forever. One concert, a single blast of loud noise, one episode of insufficient oxygen can accelerate their loss by years. Another issue lies in the nervous system. The auditory nerve, which carries impulses from the ear to the brain, also loses fibers with age. This is normal physiology, but the ear is one of the first organs to feel these effects. It's like a fiber optic cable beginning to transmit with less accuracy. The brain tries to compensate, but it does so at the cost of greater effort and increased workload, which leads to listening fatigue, something people often mistake for simple tiredness from noise. Next is neurology. As you age, it's not just the ear that changes, the brain that interprets sound changes too. And this is the less known part of the story. The ear ages faster because the brain becomes a less efficient decoder of sound. Hearing doesn't happen in the ear alone, it's a whole system. Over time, neural synchronization declines. Neurons in the brainstem, which should fire in perfect metronome-like rhythm, begin to drift. The signal remains the same, but the interpretation worsens. People believe they hear worse, but in reality, they understand worse because their nervous system no longer assigns precise meaning to what the ear delivers. This is not a problem of the ear. It is the problem of a brain aging differently from the rest of the body. Then comes metabolism. The ear is one of the few organs that functions in a fluid environment whose chemical balance must be perfect. In the cochlea, even micro shifts in potassium or calcium levels disrupt signal transmission. And here lies the most intriguing part. With age, the body becomes less capable of maintaining this balance. This is why older adults often say, "I hear, but I don't understand." The ear receives sound, but the chemistry inside the inner ear is so altered that the signal becomes blurry. No other organ depends so drastically on microchemistry, not even the eyes. Another factor accelerating the ear's aging is miniature chronic inflammation. Though not felt as pain, the effects are real. Constant microvibrations, exposure to noise, even moderate noise, And invisible micro-injuries lead to persistent low-grade inflammation within the cochlea. And chronic inflammation in this organ destroys structures faster than the body can maintain them. And there is yet another reason. The ear is an extraordinarily specialized organ. Hair cells are so specialized that they essentially do nothing else but detect vibration. This makes them exquisitely vulnerable to aging. Highly specialized cells tend to deteriorate faster. Muscle cells can alter function. Skin cells can divide. Hair cells cannot. They are like delicate needles. Once damaged, they cannot be replaced. But the most important factor is this. The ear, unlike any other sensory organ, is bombarded by stimuli constantly. You can close your eyes, touch can rest, taste works only when you eat, smell can be blocked. But hearing never stops. You hear even when you don't know you hear. You hear your heartbeat, your blood flow, the movement of your own body. You hear nighttime wind, the hum of appliances, the vibrations of the building. You hear even when you sleep. This relentless influx of stimuli means that the structures responsible for detecting sound are overloaded throughout your entire life, day after day, year after year, decade after decade. This is why the ear ages faster than other organs. It is a combination of high energy demand, delicate blood supply, zero regeneration, oxidative stress, chronic inflammation, and ceaseless activity. Hearing loss with age is not unlucky or just natural. It is the consequence of biology that never gave the ear a moment of rest. The first phase of hearing damage does not look the way most people imagine. It is not the moment when you stop hearing birds, music, or conversations. It's not a sudden going deaf. This phase is so subtle, so precise, so perfectly masked by the brain that essentially no one can detect it on their own. And here lies the cruel irony. This is the most dangerous stage, because it is the only stage you could still reverse, yet you feel nothing. In the first phase, hearing does not disappear. It becomes desynchronized. This word is the key to the whole problem. Before true hearing loss occurs, you first lose precision. It's as if someone slightly detuned your radio, still receiving the signal, but no longer crystal clear. The sound is less pure, though you don't yet call it a hearing problem. You say things like, "People speak more quietly these days. Were restaurants always this loud? Maybe I'm just tired today." You don't connect it to the ear because your brain works hard to blame the environment instead of itself. The first clinical symptom, one that can be measured, is a subtle decline in directional hearing. Your ability to determine where a sound is coming from. This is not worse hearing. It's a localization issue. The ear normally distinguishes microsecond-level differences between sounds reaching each ear. When the first phase of damage begins, those micro differences become less precise. The brain can still compensate, but less effectively. And suddenly you notice that someone calls you, and you turn your head the wrong way. Not because you didn't hear, but because your localization system is slightly out of tune. Another element of the first phase is the difficulty in catching consonants. People don't realize this, but it's consonants, not vowels, that determine whether you understand words. S, F, K, T, P are the highest frequencies, the most subtle, and the most fragile. They disappear first, but you don't not hear them. The ear still receives them. The signal is simply so imprecise that the brain has to work harder to decode it. And that's where listening fatigue begins. People in this early phase always say things like, "Noise exhausts me. I can't focus in crowds. When it's loud, it feels like I can't hear anything." Loudness is not the problem. Contrast is. The ear can no longer separate the signal from the background. The third, almost invisible symptom is microscopic delays in sound conduction within the auditory nerve. This no longer concerns the ear itself, but its connection to the brain. Research shows that before a person even begins to lose their hearing threshold by as little as 5 decibels, their brain waves that register sound are already delayed by a few milliseconds. And that's enough for you to start feeling like people speak unclearly. The brain receives the same signal, but with worse temporal precision. It's like watching a movie where the audio is just slightly out of sync with the picture. It's possible, but it's tiring. And that is exactly how the first phase works. The world doesn't get quieter, it gets less organized. The fourth early symptom is selective hyperacusis, sensitivity to specific sounds, but not to all of them. People in the first phase may say, "Dishes are too loud. Plates ring sharply. High-pitched sounds stab me." This is not sensitivity in the usual sense. It is the beginning of system instability. The ear that is losing part of its precision compensates by amplifying the rest of the signal. And suddenly some sounds become too loud, while others, the important ones, become unclear. The fifth symptom is something called central masking. It is a neurological phenomenon in which the brain starts ignoring certain frequencies because they are not delivered with enough precision. Example, a phone rings but you don't hear it because the brain decides the signal is too weak to be worth processing. And here comes the greatest danger. The brain starts learning to ignore sounds. And if something is ignored long enough, the neural connections responsible for processing it begin to disappear. That is the first step toward permanent hearing damage. The last, earliest, and most insidious symptom is micro noise. Not the classic obvious noise heard by people with more advanced damage. This is a subtle, soft, shifting sense of gray background. It's not sound. It's the absence of sound. The brain signaling that something is missing. It is like a white spot in the auditory field. People in this phase say, "I don't hear noise, but when it's quiet, something feels missing." And they're right. What's missing is precise information from certain frequencies. The worst part is that this first phase can last 5, 7, even 10 years. And during that time, no one suspects anything. Because you hear, you function, you perceive the world. The brain works like an athlete compensating for an injury, until one day, it simply can't anymore. Animal hearing is a world the human ear cannot fully grasp. Let's start with bats, masters of ultrasound. Their echolocation is not a simple reflection of sound. Some species, like the brown bat, can detect the movement of an insect measuring 3 millimeters from several meters away. Certain research has shown that a bat's brain performs echolocation analysis 20 times faster than a human can process visual information in the same spatial environment. Owls are another example of astonishing precision. Their asymmetrical ears allow them to locate a sound source in 3 dimensions, with an accuracy of 2 to 3 degrees of azimuth. In nocturnal conditions, where vision is nearly useless, an owl can pinpoint a mouse moving beneath a layer of snow at a distance of 10 meters, hearing only the slightest rustle of powder. What's more, some owls can identify prey by differentiating sounds between 1 and 8 kilohertz and amplitudes below 20 decibels, which in human terms is nearly absolute silence. Elephants use infrasound to communicate. Their conversations occur in the 14 to 24 hertz range, often below the human hearing threshold. These waves can travel through the ground for 10 to 30 kilometers, allowing elephants to coordinate herd movement, warn of predators, or arrange meetings across distant parts of the savanna. In elephants, leg bones and foot pads act as resonators, conducting vibrations into the inner ear. It's natural geophysical telecommunication, something humans cannot replicate without technology. Dolphins and whales use echolocation in the water, where sound travels faster than in air. Dolphins can detect the shape of a fish just a few centimeters long from 50 meters away. and their brains can distinguish the difference between a sound emitted by a fish versus one reflected by a plant, requiring millisecond-level and ultrasonic precision. Some whale species use infrasound to communicate across distances of hundreds of kilometers, made possible by special adaptations for conducting sound waves through water and the fatty tissues of the head. Unusual strategies are also found in smaller animals. For example, squirrels can detect the tiniest vibrations of leaves when a cat approaches their burrow. Birds of prey, like eagles, use hearing together with vision to detect the slightest rustle of a rodent or the wing flutter of another bird while flying. Fish of the genus Cynodontis possess a lateral line system that functions similarly to an ear, detecting micro vibrations in the water, allowing them to navigate and avoid predators even in total darkness. And many animals can hear what humans never notice: predictive sounds. Bats receive echolocation echoes with such accuracy that they distinguish wing shapes of insects, their movement patterns, and even the type and size of prey. Owls recognize the heartbeat sounds of small rodents, enabling precise hunting in complete darkness. Elephants can sense an approaching storm hundreds of kilometers away by detecting ground vibrations that the human body cannot register at all. The world of animal hearing is so diverse that humans are only beginning to understand it. Every creature has tailored its auditory system to its environment and survival strategy. From the ultrasound of bats, to the infrasound of elephants, to the micro vibrations of squirrels. Their brains and ears form systems capable of analyzing information with a precision that remains invisible and inaudible to humans. Imagine a world without sound. No wind, no laughter, no music, no conversations. For many deaf people, this silence is everyday life. But it does not mean a lack of communication or an inability to learn spoken language. Our brains are incredibly plastic, and the language system can develop even under severely limited hearing. Not everyone born deaf is completely without the ability to perceive sound. Depending on the degree of hearing loss, some people register low-frequency vibrations or background noise. For example, people with partial hearing loss may detect the resonance of a parent's low voice, which eventually helps them learn to modulate their own speech. For children who are completely deaf, learning traditional spoken language requires visual and tactile support and intensive training of the speech muscles. The sense of hearing is replaced by alternative perceptual strategies. Since the 1970s, one of the greatest breakthroughs has been the cochlear implant. This tiny device converts sound into electrical impulses that stimulate the auditory nerve directly. Thanks to this, children who were deaf from birth can receive sound and gradually learn to interpret it. Research shows that children who receive implants before the age of 2 often achieve speaking abilities comparable to hearing children. Their brains create new neural connections, learning to decode sounds and modulate voice based on the electrical patterns they perceive. Learning to speak for deaf individuals is not only about hearing the sound, it is also about training the articulatory muscles and perceiving vibrations. Speech therapy uses different strategies. Children learn to feel vibrations in the throat, mouth, and larynx, observe the lip movements of others, and, in the case of implants, adjust their vocal modulation to what they hear through electrical stimulation. As a result, deaf individuals can speak with nearly natural intonation and rhythm, though the process is intense and requires consistent practice. Some deaf people who cannot use implants or hearing aids learn speech through sensory substitution strategies. They may rely on visual systems such as lip reading, facial expression, and gestures. Studies have shown that deaf individuals raised in an environment rich in sign language develop not only strong communication skills, but also structural adaptations in brain regions traditionally responsible for hearing. In a sense, the brain reprograms itself, processing language visually instead of acoustically. One of the most fascinating aspects is that language and speech development can occur even in complete deafness, provided the brain is stimulated correctly. Clinical examples show children who learn to speak clearly despite not hearing a single sound until their second year of life. The key is early support, intensive therapy, and social interaction. The brain during this period is extraordinarily plastic and absorbent. In short, deaf individuals can perceive the world in different ways through technology, training, or alternative sensory pathways. They can learn to speak, even though the process requires a combination of perception, speech muscles, and a brain that adapts to new strategies for receiving or substituting sound. The world of silence is not a limitation. It is simply a different way of experiencing reality. Now imagine that your ears can do things most people never dream of. It's not only about hearing conversations or music. It's about the extraordinary biological mechanisms that allow us to perceive the world in subtle, almost magical ways. Here's the first curiosity. Your ear can locate a sound with precision, smaller than a millimeter in a specific direction when the source is close. This happens thanks to the difference in arrival time between both ears, on the order of a few microseconds. Our brain analyzes those microseconds and automatically creates a spatial map around us. That's why you can tell that a cat is quietly approaching from the side of the couch before you even see it. Another thing many people don't know. Humans can hear light or touch under specific conditions. A phenomenon known as perceptual sonoluminescence shows that our ears respond to air vibrations so subtle that they enter the range of ultrasound, something some researchers compare to hearing the vibrations of light in a physiological sense. Although not widely known, experiments demonstrate that certain individuals can detect light vibrations indirectly through micro-movements of air. Another astonishing fact, the human ear self-cleans and regenerates delicate structures, although we do not know precisely how long they function perfectly. Hair cells in the cochlea do not regrow in adulthood, but the body can partially compensate for their loss by altering the brain's way of processing signals. This is why we can still hear relatively well even when part of the inner ear mechanism is damaged. One of the strangest curiosities involves the biological microphone phenomenon in the human body. The bones of the skull and jaw conduct sound in a way that lets us hear our own voice more clearly than anyone else does. That's why your voice sounds completely different in a recording. The sound you hear internally travels partly through bone, not just air. This also explains why some people hear subtle vibrations, such as their own heartbeat at night, in complete silence. And now, something truly remarkable. Our auditory system can predict sounds. The brain analyzes patterns and can fill in a missing part of the signal before it actually reaches the ear. That's why in music, you often sense the next note. And in conversation, you anticipate what someone will say before the words arrive. This is the result of a delicate synchronization between the auditory cortex, procedural memory, and expectation pathways. Science offers yet another curiosity. There is a phenomenon known as hearing in darkness. Studies show that in total darkness, people become more sensitive to sound. The brain increases the sensitivity of the auditory cortex to compensate for the lack of visual input. This is the same mechanism that allows blind individuals to perceive space and objects using only subtle sound reflections. And finally, a true gem. The human ear can respond to emotional vibrations in other people. Research shows that our brain detects subtle shifts in tone that reveal stress, fear, or joy before we consciously register the words. In a sense, the ear is also an organ of empathic hearing.